Going to look at the international newspapers now. They're focusing on Israel today. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sacking two key ministers and declaring he wants Parliament dissolved, triggering an early general election flow.
That's right. It's big news. It's on the front page of lots of papers, including the Wall Street Journal today. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu said his finance minister, Yair Lapid, and Justice Minister, Tzipi Livni, were planning a putsch against him. So you can see this photo here on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. In the background, you can see Tzipi Livni. And there's a quote there right in the bottom right-hand corner: "I will no longer tolerate an opposition within the government." So lots of papers are focusing on the Israeli prime minister, especially what's driving him. According to Slate, Netanyahu, he is apparently confident that he'll win more power, and that's why he's calling for these new elections. Basically, a lot of papers are saying today that the third Netanyahu government basically was brought down because of mutual loathing. Netanyahu has had enough with his divided coalition and really wants a more manageable government made up of his right-wing allies and the ultra-Orthodox parties.
So what about the papers? How are they reacting actually in Israel itself?
Well, it's interesting. Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually drawing quite a lot of criticism in the Israeli press. This isn't surprising, of course, from papers on the left, but even more mainstream papers like Yediot Ahronot here, they're also critical of the Prime Minister. This article, for instance, says that he sent the political system into a tailspin by de facto calling a national election. You can see here, this article says that when Israel needed unity, Netanyahu went to a divisive vote. And this article doesn't really have much hope for the future. However dismal the current situation is, we can be sure that the next Netanyahu government will only be worse. Now, Haaretz is even more alarming today in their editorial. They say if Netanyahu wins again at the ballot box, Israel's future is in danger. The stability of Israel's economy is on the line, as is the relative peace that Israel enjoys today. So you can see this is the editorial of Haaretz. It's saying, vote against Netanyahu to save Israel.
Meanwhile, papers also focusing on yesterday's vote in the French Parliament to recognise Palestine as a state.
Absolutely. That's big news here in France. 2/3 of lawmakers in Parliament voted in favor of this motion to recognize the Palestinian state. This is an article in L'Humanité, which is really applauding this vote. It's a very symbolic vote, of course. It won't actually be constraining for the government, but you can see here, L'Humanité, un vote historique, a historic vote. L'Obs, a magazine here in France, interviews Ronnie Broman. He's the former president of Doctors Without Borders. He's a prominent analyst on foreign affairs. You can see here he's applauding yesterday's vote, but he says this should have happened 20 years ago. Now, MPs in Britain and Spain have passed similar motions, and Belgium could be next. That's on the front page of Le Soir, the Belgian paper. You can see here it talks about how Belgium is set to recognize the Palestinian state, and Parliament could start debating the issue next week. In its editorial, Le Soir really applauds the fact that Belgium is going to debate this. You can see here, this editorial says it's important for Belgium to be on the right side of history.
And finally, from Flo, a story which we mentioned in the news, which she's doing in the papers as well. It's a great story. Papers in Britain focusing on the remains of Richard III. Now, they've been discovered in a car park in Leicester 2 years ago, but they've been doing lots of analysis, haven't they?
That's right. Now, DNA tests basically have confirmed that these bones did indeed belong to Richard III. 99.999% sure. There was some doubt, but now all that doubt is gone. Now, what's interesting is scientists say that it's likely that he had blue eyes and blonde hair. So you can see this photo in The Guardian. They've kind of reimagined a very famous painting of Richard III where he has, well, dark hair. And another very interesting thing they discovered through the analysis of his DNA is that there might have been infidelity in his family tree.
I can't believe it.
Very juicy details here. And this could have profound historical implications that could actually affect the current Queen Elizabeth II. Now, scientists say there was a false paternity event somewhere along his family line. To quote this article in The Guardian, it says that the present Queen Now, this might be confusing for anybody who doesn't know about the British royal family. I don't really understand this quote, but here it is. The present queen may not be descended from John of Gaunt or Edward III, the lineage on which the Tudor claim the throne originated. Basically, someone's daddy wasn't their daddy. And so there could, well, it's not 100% sure, but the Windsor line there could be questions about their ancestry because of all these tangled bloodlines. It's complicated, but basically, to sum up the article, there is doubt on the Queen's current lineage.
I think false paternity event has to be the expression.
False paternity event is the expression of the year. I think you're quite right. It actually means, I suppose, then, that I could be King of England without
Perhaps.
even knowing it.
Oh, I might be Queen.
You might be Queen. Or Stephen.
I'm unlikely to be involved.
You never know. You never know. Thanks a lot, guys. That's Stephen and Flo back at the same time tomorrow.